Hey everyone, Ian here from Coastal Drone. At UAV Expo 2025, I met with Ross from Blueflite, a company focused on building drones for delivery, especially in critical sectors like medical logistics. Their aircraft stand out with a unique design, an internal payload bay that keeps sensitive cargo like blood or medicine stable during flight. What's really innovative is their tilt-rudder system though. So unlike typical multi-rotor drones, Blueflite's motors can articulate 135 degrees, letting the aircraft stay flat in flight while still handling gusts and failures gracefully. In fact, instead of relying solely on a parachute, the system uses active redundancy to bring the aircraft down under control. So with Transport Canada increasing allowable weight categories and pushing beyond line of sight forward, platforms like this could enable drone delivery networks for healthcare and remote access across the country. So we also touched on pricing, materials, and how Blueflite sees itself replacing some missions currently handled by helicopters, but of course at a fraction of the cost. This is a glimpse of where delivery drones are going and why everyone needs to be paying attention. So let's jump into my conversation with Blueflite. So I'm here with Ross from Blueflite, and Ross is going to introduce a cool looking airframe over here and tell us all about what's going on. Nice to meet you, Ross.
Nice to meet you too. My name is Ross. I'm a design engineer at Blueflite, and we're a OEM focused on making cargo delivery drones, specifically for use in the medical space, industrial logistics like serving ship-to-shore operations or open-pit mines, and there's also the government aspect, which is mainly medical delivery, and then consumer goods, which is a little bit in the background due to the regulation space right now. What's unique about this aircraft is that first there's an internal payload, which is kind of unique in the delivery drone industry. Like they're usually just kind of shoving it on the bottom of the drone.
Yeah, it's flying boxes.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas this is put right in the center of the aircraft, and what happens is if you have a really sensitive payload, you can land the aircraft and someone can come grab it out of the top. Or if it's a less sensitive payload like food or maybe some blood, we can do a winch delivery to the ground or an aerial drop.
Right.
The other really interesting part about this drone is that it's a tilt-rudder, and you may be familiar with quad planes or whatever, which either are up or forward. But this aircraft has 135 degrees of freedom on every motor arm, independently actuated.
Oh wow!
And what that means is the drone stays flat in forward flight. So if we want to go forward, we tilt all the motor arms forward as much as we need. If we want to yaw, we tilt the left ones backward, right ones forward. And what that does for us is, imagine like you have a wind gust. If we don't have to rotate 55 pounds to respond to that, right? The drone stays flat.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Mass. You've got, yeah.
So we have a much higher wind or environmental envelope than other aircraft in the class. And then there's also, we can address failure modes differently. You might be familiar with the industry. A lot of commercial drones have parachutes on them nowadays.
Yeah.
We will always have a parachute on for the foreseeable future, but imagine if we lose that front right motor arm. The drone's going to be unstable, right? Well, we get real-time feedback from every motor. We can say that's not operating correctly, turn off the whole front of the motor, and now we're going to hang from the rear of the drone and make a controlled descent. So we'll tilt these rear two motors all the way backwards.
Wow.
And then we'll come down much slower than a parachute and in an area that we know is safe.
Yeah.
So the regulators really love that because the parachute has its own problems, and so being able to minimize the use of that's really.
You're not necessarily doing a spin to land or
exactly, yeah.
a ballistic landing either, something like that. I don't see any control surfaces on the wings. Are just more stability.
That's a very interesting point. It minimizes moving parts in this aircraft. So even in forward flight, it's all the attitude, the direction heading, all that stuff is only changed by differential thrust and the angle of the motors.
Right.
So the wings are really just lifting surfaces.
And so to design and build something like this, tell me about yourself. Like, how did you get into this position or come to building your own drone and getting into this part of the world?
I would love to say that I built this drone myself.
Okay.
But we have a really great team at Blueflite. Our CTO, James McCleary, did the initial design for the aircraft, and now I do have responsibility over some different components on the aircraft as a design engineer. It's a really fun job integrating new parts, building things that are put into production and all that. But I have a mechanical engineering degree from Michigan State University.
Cool.
And really, like most people in the drone industry, bought a DJI when I was young and then realized that you could build racing quads and how sweet those are.
The gateway drug of FPV.
Yeah, exactly. So built some of my own and then got an internship at Blueflite in college.
Cool.
And then at Michigan State, they have some great programs for research and being able to generate some funding from NASA specifically. And so got more into drones and in truck drone tandem delivery and stuff like that.
Okay.
went and did a stint at Lockheed as an intern, and eventually realized, I really like the small company kind of startup atmosphere, and came back to Blueflite.
So you dream an RG pilot.
Well, I dream of PX4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about specs. I assume being a hybrid, like the ability to go into a stable body, do the wings contribute to lift in forward flight? Or?
Yeah, so they will, in forward flight, they'll contribute to the 100% of the lift of the aircraft.
Okay.
There's a couple different configurations that we're deciding between right now. Well, are the rears only powered? Are all four powered?
Right, because you don't need everything.
It's really going to be based off of the efficiency. And I don't mean to say that this drone is not out and deployed. There's an aircraft behind me without wings. That's being used today for medical delivery all around the world. But this aircraft is a little bit future use. Coming out very soon. Later this year, early next year, we'll have a finished design of it, which is based off of testing on a smaller aircraft, a bunch of CFD data, and then some bespoke design for this size of drone.
Do you have an anticipated payload range?
Yes. So the drone behind me carries about 3 kilograms of payload and can go between 14 and 16 miles.
Okay.
So that's a little bit farther than most pure quadcopters.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to this tilting idea where as you increase speed, you're not increasing the area that's being hit with wind, so our cruise speed's a little bit higher, right?
Yeah.
With this aircraft, we'll be carrying around 2 kilograms because you have to save some weight for the wings, and then it'll go about 40 kilometers, which is, I think, a little over 20 miles.
Just speaking my metric system.
Yeah, we do metric at Blueflite. Yep. So, you think cool things that we've just to mention about Blueflite, we've done some drone delivery in Traverse City with a medical hospital up there called Munson Medical, where we were bringing back blood samples from the dialysis clinic to the main hospital, and then doing a winch delivery there. So we've done several weeks of that, a couple more phases. Some other opportunities coming up in the southern part of the U.S., which basically they're saying, hey, we want to do medical delivery as well. And so a lot of great momentum in this space. And to support that, we're working through one of the certifications offered by the FAA called 4407.
Okay.
And so we'll do that on that aircraft so it can be added to Part 135 certificates.
So Finn and I are from Canada.
Okay.
We're down here checking out basically everything that's coming new because the reality is that we want to see the industry expand and offer more in terms of hardware. One of the cool things that's happened in Canada in the last year is our law set has changed. So 25 kilograms or 55 pounds was our upper weight limit for small drones, which were considered drones that didn't need a waiver or any kind of special permit. Now you can, as of November 4th, under a standard Part 107 equivalent, the advanced license, you can now fly up to 150 kilograms or 331 pounds. Do you see a scale for what you're doing to a heavier lift drone that would still operate or something like that? Like, we're trying to see, first off, are you planning to come into Canada with your market?
We are very much trying to. There are some customers that we're working with in the medical space, in the eastern part of Canada that are interested in our aircraft, specifically for reliability, specifically because of the wind profile. But going back to your question of, would we go heavier? We would. We started making really big drones, like drones about 3 times the size of this.
Okay.
As a really young startup, that was pretty expensive, and especially when things went wrong.
Very steep.
Yeah,
ladder, yeah.
So we went to a very small aircraft after that, developed our controller, developed our manufacturing, all of that stuff. And then we went to this kind of mid-size on the upper side of 55 pounds, which is really the flagship right now. We would love to go heavier. The tilt-rudder is a heavy technology, right? Because
makes sense.
We have a mechanism under each of the tilt arms. So we get a lot of performance increase, but we would really love to, be able to carry more payload because this MTOW is actually 28 kilograms.
Really?
But, we're limiting at 55 right now. So going heavier, yes. And what we've done some SIBRs that say that this technology, we can scale it up and it's, just as effective as a tilt rotor. So.
Cool.
Yep.
What's about, do you have a target price in mind for this or the existing model for if you're looking to purchase it, or is it?
Yeah, it's an expensive aircraft. It can run you a little shy of, it's like $75K or so.
Right.
It really depends on the configuration that you buy.
Right.
It's very important for us that we get the price down because, as Part 108 comes out, as the regulations in Canada and Europe change and are more friendly to operators, I think you'll see that that you want to you want to bring new operators into the space, right?
Well, it's scalable.
Yeah. You remind me of what was the original question?
Well, price point, and it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
like, honestly, I think 75 US dollars, of course.
Yeah.
So that's relatively affordable for a delivery platform.
Yeah, and it's good, but it could be better. And I think the point I was trying to make, and lost my train of thought, was vertical integration is the name of the game in the OEM industry, right? This started off the hobby industry where you bought every part and you put it together.
Exactly.
But then you're paying other people's margins. So everywhere we can, there's a long list of items that we're bringing in house, and we've completed some of those in terms of like the battery we now build in house.
Oh, cool.
And other stuff like that. Obviously, the airframe and the composites are all done in house and things like that. So that's kind of the roadmap of how we get that price down. Obviously, volume helps, but you're not paying for everybody's parts.
Margin on margin, yeah.
One thing I would like to mention is that a lot of this aircraft is 3D printed, if you can believe it or not.
Wow.
Although it looks glossy and smooth, we use MJF technology, which is an HP process, powder bed 3D printing. So really, the only carbon on here is this top panel and the side panel.
Wow,
and everything else is 3D printed.
I thought it was laid up, so that's good to point out.
Yeah, which is great for, obviously we avoid the injection molding. We can iterate on the design quickly, which it wouldn't be the case if everything was carbon fiber.
Yeah.
And then it gives us a lot of flexibility from strategically mounting components and things like that.
What are you so you've done delivery from hospital, was that beyond line of sight or was that VLOS for those operations?
Those were visual line of sight.
Okay.
And we were, had to be pretty clever about, crossing roads and taking a line that was over trees and minimizing population. But the certification I mentioned earlier is really conducive to doing beyond visual line of sight.
Right.
Mainly from like the reliability testing that has to occur.
Right.
And just showing the FAA that this is we've been flying with this aircraft for this many hours. It's quite reliable. We have a list of every type of incident that has occurred on it.
Right.
And we can be transparent.
So the robustness of your system, yeah.
There's obviously the side of it though that is like the detect and avoid.
That's where I was going next.
UCM management, where I think we look to partners to help with. Obviously we can offer our own expertise in that space, but there's some really great people in Michigan where the company's based, like Airspace Link, that are doing really great work in that space that we're hoping to work with, to continue to work with.
So the goal would be to have like a symbiotic package that works for everything.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think that symbiosis or whatever is kind of the requirement here, right? You're gonna have you might have a city that's got 2 operators in it or 4 operators, and then every other hobbyist who's flying their drone, and we all should have a space in the airspace, but everybody, kind of pushing data back to a single source of truth is going to be one of those ways that we kind of manage our traffic. And somebody here mentioned it to me earlier that like even when you're flying manned aircraft, you have ADS-B, but you really rely on ATC to help you deconflict. And I don't see why that has to be different for drones.
So you're thinking like an air navigation service provider for drones?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, there can be an autonomy level to it. We don't need to have somebody talking in our ear, but
no, it'd be chaos.
Yeah, I mean, having that computation off board, you could save some weight, and that could be.
Finn and I both fly commercially helicopters and airplanes as well.
Sweet.
So we know the pain that is the chaos in the skies. We fly in one of the busiest training airspaces in Canada. So, and right now in Canada, ADS-B is not mandated. It's still probably 3 years out for Class C airspace, which is the equivalent of a Class Bravo.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a ways to go. GA doesn't have it, right? It's very low chance that they have it. And then there's lag, there's shadowing, there's cones, there's like most of my helicopters at my company have receivers, but 90% of the aircraft that's in front of us doesn't have it.
Yeah, they're not broadcasting in the first place.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Do you have anything else you want to say to wrap it up about the airframe, or?
We're an international company in the sense that we have aircraft deployed all over the world. We're very interested in, I think the goal here is to replace the helicopter, and something that I say, sorry, but the helicopter is a switchblade, right? And there's always a use for it, but it's, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 an hour to operate.
Yeah.
And when you want to replace something like that, I don't think you replace it with a switchblade. No. You replace it with something that's focused and good at that task, right? So you might, if it's a surveillance drone or if it's a delivery drone, there's room for a 50 kilogram drone, a 5 kilogram drone, and everything in between. And that's really how you get the cost of operating down. And so when you go through the show and you see there's so many different drones, it's a good thing, right?
It is.
The industry's consolidating, but it's a good thing to see a lot of different operators because you see people specializing where it's actually needed right now.
Yeah, identifying and solving problems rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah, general aviation doesn't have the pace that we're seeing at these kind of shows. Like every year you come here, something totally different and something totally new. So, no, I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much, Ross.
Of course,
It's been awesome talking about this.
So thanks for watching this episode of our UAV Expo 2025 interview series here on Coastal Drone. If you want to catch the rest of the series, check out the full playlist linked below. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe for more Canadian drone insight, training, and news. And we'll see you in the next one.